Wonderful presentation. That was our best final yet. Now, class, who is next? Let me see. You.
Who, me?
Yes, you. Come on up.
Okay. 1,850. Work hard in silence and let success be the noise. Something I was told as a kid. Positively thinking, quietly cunning, and unabashedly strong. My dad could have been a motivational speaker. The weight of that is heavy, though, you know. How strong can I be? How strong is the person next to me? And more importantly, what is strength? Is it that weight that we carry, the things we do day to day, what we say, what we can take? I like to think so. Well, Dad, it's all that stuff, especially where we're from, you know. Detroit strong, baby! I love this city. Even though we're not like in the city, it's our landmark, it's our home. Some of the strongest people in the world hail from our side of the woods. I have examples. Kid Rock. Alice Cooper loved the makeup. Tim Allen, ho, ho, ho. And Aretha Franklin, no, that's Eminem. No, I'm a huge fan of Eminem, even though his restaurant is very meh. Cornelius Henderson, though, that's a legacy, am I right? Cornelius Langston Henderson. Oh, you don't know who that is? Oh, you are in for a treat. So we all love the city, right? We have the Red Wings, the Pistons. We have art and passion, things like the GM building, the Fisher Theater, all of Greektown, the riverfront, that big fist sculpture by Joe Louis Arena. That's probably Joe Louis's fist now that I think about it. But the Ambassador Bridge is where it's at. I mean, before I moved to the city, the scope of that thing made no sense, but as I got older and I could explore the city more, the magnitude of that thing is unbelievable. Now, I'm really excited to tell you about Mr. Henderson, a truly remarkable man, one that I can especially admire. So, we're all graduates, 2022, yeah? Well, 111 years ago, Cornelius L. Henderson graduated from U of M as the second black graduate ever out of their civil engineering program. That's a pretty amazing feat. He was never partnered with his classmates to study. Total isolation while studying things like structural mechanics, structural design, hydraulics. Ugh. And out of the other 34 graduating seniors, one of his professors said that he possessed a much better knowledge of architecture and engineering than the rest. Now that's a great example of strength in my book. And after he graduated, engineering jobs were plentiful, but it was 1911. It was hard for him to find work in what he wanted to do. But, call it fortune, call it fate, call it coincidence, a man by the name of B.K. Bash, another graduate from U of M in 1909, spoke with Henderson, one of the very few people who would speak with him outside of the program. See, Bash suggested that Henderson apply at the job where he worked, the Canadian Bridge Company, a hop, skip, and river jump away on the Detroit River in Walkerville, Ontario, Canada. Now, this is where the real story begins. You see, in the first 9 years of Henderson's residency with the CBC, he went from draftsman to managing the stock department to a steel cost estimator and then to a full-fledged structural design engineer. And in that 9-year period, he would go on to help accomplish the biggest and most meaningful international connection of the time period, and that is The Ambassador Bridge. You see, construction began in the summer of 1927 and lasted 2 years with Henderson as the chief structural steel designer for the Canadian side of the project. He designed the Windsor approach and would later supervise the installation of many of the bridge's steel sections. And at the end of it all, costing $23.5 million, with a center span of 1,850 feet and a length of 1.5 miles, the longest suspension bridge in the world was built. Only to be surpassed like 15 years later by the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, but that's not what we're talking about today. No. You see, the Ambassador Bridge was built in part to commemorate American and Canadian soldiers of World War I, but at the same time, it was a hand, an extension and connectivity, an offer to all who are curious and want to explore who we are, who you are. Yeah, it's really magnificent. Connectivity, strength. Well, anyways, Henderson would go on to work on yet another project in 1928, right in the middle of his work on the Ambassador Bridge, on what would be known as the very first international vehicle underground tunnel. Any guesses on what that might be? Oh my God, you are so right. The Detroit-Windsor Tunnel. Is that not mind-blowing to you? He was the construction supervisor for the steel tubes that lined the 5,160-foot-long tunnel. And look, I'm not going to pretend like I know what any of that means. How you put a tunnel under a river, I don't know, but that's amazing. Henderson would work for the CBC for 47 years of his life, leaving his mark on every monument he touched. He did work on bridges, in railroads, in factories, in municipal buildings, and so much more. He would travel the US and Canada, New Zealand, the Caribbean, South America. Man, he lived a life, one that was largely never heard of. Sorry to go back, but if you go to the Ambassador Bridge's website, www.ambassadorbridge.com, there's a section called Bridge Facts. And it's all sorts of history about the story leading up to the construction of the bridge. The mayor of Detroit, Johnny Smith, being against the bridge's construction, how he went to the radio to voice his opposition to the project, how on the way out of the door of the radio station, he crossed paths with the commissioner of street railway, how on the way out of the door of the radio station crossed paths with the commissioner of street railways, who was going into the station to support the project. And Smith fires him on the spot, so on and so forth, how Joseph Bauer, the bridge's financier, was up against a mid-May deadline to start construction on the bridge or risk losing congressional approval to build at all. But the special election for the citizen to approve the project wasn't scheduled until June, so just a few days before the deadline, he stages a ceremony where his daughter ceremoniously pounds the first boring stake into the ground to signal construction began. How Mayor Smith loses his primary for re-election in part due to his opposition of the bridge. How Cornelius L. Henderson nothing. Yeah, just nothing. Now, he worked the Thousand Island and Quebec bridges on the St. Lawrence River between New York and Ontario. Commercial building projects for GM and Chrysler. He helped build the Canadian Supreme Court building and Royal Canadian Air Force Station. I love to talk about strength because a lot of people don't know what it is, including myself. Like, I can pretend, but at the end of the day, I can never do what Cornelius Henderson did. I find myself wondering if when he died in 1976, he ever thought his name would be said again. It's been buried under so much and for whatever reason is forgotten history. And yet here we are, able to speak his name into existence yet again as just an echo. Like so many of us, hopes happens. We don't want to be forgotten. But that for us, the normal people, that's through our loved ones and those we cherish individually. But for someone like Cornelius L. Henderson, he helped bring families together. Us, friends, strangers, lovers of all walks of life, by building bridges to cross with steel and his brilliant mind. And of course he didn't do it alone, but you can't really name another black man in America in the 20s who contributed as heavily to the great American melting pot. You just can't. You see, black folks were needed for industrial work after World War I, and migration north led to an expansion of about 6,000 black folks in Detroit to 120,000. And one man, one speck in so many who were forgotten, who believed in the city and her people, Mr. Henderson kept building connections, bonds as strong as steel. So, the next time you're in the city and you go down to the riverfront and you breathe in the smell of water and rust and great food and sewage, frankly, it doesn't really come out of your clothes. Just look up and marvel at the connection to humanity in our own backyard. Remember his name. Be the echo. Build a bridge.